Join me now for an interview with Dr. Laurie Betito, author of The Sex Bible for People Over 50. Dr. Laurie is a clinical psychologist with a specialty in sex therapy and has been a practicing psychotherapist for the last 26 years. For the last 24 of those years, she's been heard on radio and seen on television, dispensing sex and relationship advice. She's a regular contributor to various magazines, newspapers, and television shows. She is presently heard nightly in Montreal, Canada, on radio station CJAD 800 on the AM dial. Her show Passion has been on the air for over 15 years and has always been number one in its time slot. Dr. Laurie, welcome to the program. So nice to have you with us today.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, just to review a little bit, you are the president of the Sexual Health Network of Quebec, amongst your other duties. What does that mean?
Yeah, I have many duties. That's one of my volunteer duties, and basically the Sexual Health Network used to be Planned Parenthood of Montreal. We revamped about 10 years ago or so. We rebranded in another name, and we advocate for sex education in schools. We fundraise. We go into the schools to teach sex education, and we offer our services for free. So we fundraise so we can pay for the educators, so it's more difficult for the schools to actually say no to us, right? If we say, well, it's free, take it.
Well, this is very interesting because it leads me into one of the questions that I had prepared to ask you in this interview today. I'm a man of a certain age, which means I'm somewhere in between 50 and 60 and approaching 60 actually this year. And none of us in my generation, none of us had any sort of legitimate instruction with regard to sex education when we were growing up. So
Right.
We only learned how to have sex by trial and error most. I guess that's the way it is with most people. Trial and error. And that it can almost ruin a lifetime if you don't get some legitimate instruction, which I had to figure things out on my own with a little help over the years, which leads me to your book, The Sex Bible for People Over 50, which is the boomer generation. I recognize that guy on the cover. I don't know who he is, but he's a very handsome guy.
And he looks very good for his age.
For his age, yeah.
Everybody asks me, hey, is that guy really over 50? I don't believe you.
Well, I hear that a lot. Oh, my God, that wasn't a modest statement. The fact of the matter is, I think if I can be candid, and I guess I can on my own show, it's because I feel I'm living a healthy life in that arena. It keeps me young because I'm actually engaging physically from time to time. And I think that has a lot to do with youthful vitality in addition to probably positive thinking. So let's talk about the motivation for you writing this book. Why did you do it?
Well, exactly for the same reasons you just said. We don't have enough sex education, but even for us grown-ups, even the older grown-ups. And as a clinician, just a clinical psychologist and a sex therapist, I get a lot of people walking through my office with the same types of questions, and they don't have that information. Changes are happening to them, and they're kind of freaking out, like thinking, what's going on? I'm not normal, and how come I can't get it up anymore? Or how come it takes me so long? And the women are complaining, it's painful, I gave up sex, and all of these tells me that nobody's talking about the changes in aging. And that was needed, absolutely needed. And the proof is in the pudding because the book has done really, really well in second printing already. And so I know there's a need, definitely. And as you know, I have a nightly radio program, and I've been doing radio for the last 16 years. And the questions I get night after night also very much related to changes as we age. So it was just a natural progression for me to write the book, and having turned 50 myself.
What is the number one complaint about men that women are voicing to you?
That women are voicing that that men don't understand that there's a difference between their sexual desire and their partner's sexual desire. That they just don't get it. They don't get that they're not the same, and they don't understand that if they don't want to have sex, it's not because they don't want their partner. It's really because they're either exhausted or they're not getting other needs met, and they don't understand that the pressure, they get a lot of pressure from their partners, and what they complain about most is that, doesn't he get that pressure only pushes me away and that doesn't bring me any closer? So that's one thing. Another one is we come to the conclusion that many women unfortunately end up treating their husbands or their partners like kids, or they look at them as if, oh, one more kid in the house, right? So obviously there's, cancels each other out. You cannot be attracted to somebody you perceive as your child.
But isn't that true? Don't men behave as kids in many relationships and many marriages? Aren't they substituting women as a mother substitute, so to speak?
Well, if they are, they're not. It's not healthy.
But
that's not what women want. it's so interesting because often in my practice, I'll get a couple that comes in. It happens almost daily, where the partner, often it's the male, but says, we need to go see a sex therapist because there's something wrong with you. You're not interested in sex, and I want sex, and you're not interested, so we better fix you. And they come into my office, and he's so hoping I give her some kind of pill or magic solution. And you know what often happens? When I do the evaluation, I figure out what her life is all about, and I look at the fact that she is interested in sex. She is not interested in sex with him, not necessarily with anybody else. But when I turn to him and I say things like, your wife is interested in sex, just not with you, and their mouth drops. And now we get to the real problem. Why not with you? What's going on? How are you treating her in the home? Is she complaining over and over again about the same things, that you're not helping her enough, that you pressure her, that you do this, that, or the other? So it's not that she's not interested. She just is pushing him away.
Wouldn't you say that that's an issue across the board that is genderless? You can be a man or a woman and still have the same issue. It's been my contention that Viagra may not be necessarily the option for people our age. It would be a variety.
No, I don't think it's a question of variety. Look, for some people, it's true, you can't compete with a new shiny object is a lot more exciting than your dull object you've known. Not that I want to objectify, but I'm trying to make a parallel here. Obviously, there's always something more exciting. But if you make a choice to be monogamous with somebody, and that's entirely up to whatever couple, right? You can choose to be open, you can choose to be whatever you want, no judgment there. But if you choose monogamy, that means you're choosing to be with that one person. So how do you make it so that it's fun with that one person, right? And it just means getting rid of all the other crap that's around that impedes good sexuality between you.
What if you just decide to get rid of the crap, whatever it is, and just read your book, The Sex Bible for People Over 50, and just, I don't like this about you, you don't like this about me. We forget about all that and just read the book. Now, there have been instances, and I've been made aware of one or two of them here and there, where couples that have been married, let's say for 30 years or more, have read the book, put away their issues, and just have had a great time, and they're closer than ever. It can be as simple as that.
Yes, it can. That's the thing. It doesn't have to be so complicated. And if we come to accept each other as is, and we read the book with an open mind, because the book covers all of this. It covers everything to why people don't feel like it, what the problem might be, what are some of the issues to look at. It goes through when you actually need help. But this book can avoid a lot of that. If you read it and you still need help, then seek the help of a therapist. But I have found this too, that often clients will come in and say, go read the book and then call me. Like, take all of this under advisement first, because it's very directive. It tells you the problem, it tells you how to fix it. And it gives you tools to be able to do this as a couple. And what I have found, Ellis, is that people are reading it as a couple, which is kind of fun. And that's in part, large part, because of the pictures.
And the pictures are very, very tasteful, I notice. They're suggestive.
Beautiful.
And, of course, there's quite a bit of instruction related to the photographs. And the comments I've heard from readers of your book is exactly what you've said. It's better done when read together. And there's a bit of excitement and enticement that goes along. Sex is really, really exciting, and we're never really exposed to that concept as an acceptance in our culture while we've grown up.
And for some places, worse than others, Some of us, I think I'm fortunate to have grown up in Montreal, which is a bit more liberal, I would say, right? And then when I visit other places, I realize how sex negative so many places are. It's not even cultural, but from state to state or from different religions, what have you. So these are all impediments, really, to healthy sexuality.
Well, you mentioned religion. I was thinking about that. In the context of religion, whatever your religion is, if you're leading monogamous life and within your faith, this book is still exceedingly helpful in those arenas.
Yes, absolutely. You take what you want and you leave what you want behind. This book tells you all your options, including options that may not fit for you. For example, there are parts in there about bondage and, light bondage and kinky stuff. There's stuff in there about swinging, alternative lifestyles. These are all options that none of them are, I didn't write anything in there to say you should do this. It's more about here are all the options that people have done, talked about, have said help them. You get to choose what works for you and what fits with your values.
So this is not necessarily a book about any particular form of sex that you've mentioned. It just covers everything.
That's why it's called the Bible. It covers everything in a very concise manner. So we do cover everything from why sex is really healthy for you, so all the physical health benefits, the psychological health benefits to it. We talk about all the potential problems that arise as we age and how to adapt to it, how to look at sexuality with a much wider view. It's not just about penis and vagina. It really is so much more than that. And so it really covers all of these different areas. And I think it's pretty comprehensive. I mean, it required a lot of research, and I'm very happy with it.
The photographs in the book, they really do tell a story. And I think in this society, we're very visually driven. The photos appear to me to be, there's a lot of happiness that's portrayed and just people having a good time. And it's conveyed through the photographs, and I think that would lead into you wanting to know how that happens. Let's talk about happiness and love and intention related to sex. Why is it important just not to get it down mechanically, but to make that connection between partners?
Well, that's the thing, and I think as we get older, that connection is even more of a requirement. And it's not that it's a requirement, but people look for more connection and meaning, right? As we get older, we start to really maybe take stock of our lives, and we want that meaning. We look for that meaning in our lives. So when we have somebody to share it with, and when the connection and the sex has meaning, it just makes it that much better. Now, that may be just my opinion and my view and my values coming through, but I really and truly believe this. And the people who come see me also say that, and I notice that as they get older, for example, men tend to want more connection and more intimacy as they get older than when they were younger.
Part of your job, I would imagine, is to redirect that attention and intimacy to the partner that you're with, correct?
Well, generally, if that's what they're looking for. I do work with couples and partners who are polyamorous or live in open marriages, which is another whole area, right? And brings its own sometimes issues, sometimes not. But yeah, if I'm just dealing with essentially monogamous couples, that's mostly what we're talking about.
That is mostly what we're talking about. And I'll ask you just briefly here to respond to this question about polyamorous relationships and the swinger lifestyle in general. Does that, in your opinion, work? I mean, I imagine it works for the people that are involved in it, but overall, is it healthy?
Well, that's not a judgment I'm going to make. And honestly, the couples I have met who live the lifestyle, who spend, say, vacations, or they go to specific resorts where there's much more openness and kind of free love, if you will, those couples, they have something interesting about them. And what I've noticed is they are extremely open and communicative. Nothing is ever hidden. There are no secrets. It's complete transparency. The love and intimacy is shared between the two of them, but the sex and the pleasure is shared with others. And they get excited by watching their partner being excited. So it's not about someone else touching their partner, but it's a focus still is on the partner and the partner's pleasure. Listen, this is so not for everybody. Most of us, I think, when we think about our partners being with somebody else, doesn't make us feel too good, or even picturing ourselves in casual relationships may also not feel so good. But for a segment of the population, this works for them. And many come to this later in life, which I also found quite interesting.
So without making a judgment, there are people that are enjoying this lifestyle and are having a very healthy life, at least as far as they're concerned,
Absolutely.
without judgment.
That's right. And they've got children and they engage in this. It's their private part. Their colleagues don't know about it. Their families don't generally know about this. It's what happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom no matter how many people are in the bedroom, kind of thing. And for them, it works. In order for it to work, it requires extremely good communication skills and also great negotiating skills. So a lot of negotiation, compromise, understanding. If you're remotely jealous, forget it. This is not the place for you. You should not be engaging in the swinging lifestyle. As much as it's titillating and potentially it excites you to think about having sex with other people, if you have even a small bit of jealousy in you, that isn't going to work. I can tell you a story of this couple that came to see me. The husband was pressuring his wife to have an open relationship. He wanted to have variety. Finally, she says, okay, fine, we'll have variety. So she's the first one to have a new partner, all right? He flips out. He did not realize, he was only thinking from his point of view, gee, it'll be fun when I have a new partner. What he hadn't counted on is, how am I going to feel when she's with somebody else? And so he introduces her to the lifestyle. So he kind of pushed her into it. She does it. Now she's really liking this multiple partner thing. And he's freaking out. And she's saying, well, too bad. You opened that door. You can't just take it back because now you're uncomfortable. Now I like it. And so, of course, there's issues with them now.
So it's truly not for everybody, and it's truly not for anyone who has a jealous bone in their body. And I would venture to say that many people do. Most people do.
That's right. And be careful what you wish for is the the bottom line with that one.
The book certainly does teach everybody new tricks, and I use that word tricks with loving, soft quotation marks around it. Essentially, how do you teach an old dog new tricks if they're just locked into one way of having sex for years and years and years?
Well, hopefully if they open the book, they're open to trying new things. And that's what I have found, is that the older we get, the more comfortable we start to get with our own selves, and we are actually more open to trying new things. So I find when I look around and I look at older people, they are way more open to talking about sexuality than younger people, believe it or not. And so I think that just opening the book is the first step to saying, yeah, we can try what's in here. And it's easier when it comes from outside of ourselves, right? Because the book says to do it. So it's not I say to do it, the book says to do it. So it's a little bit easier when it's a third party who kind of makes that suggestion.
It's easier to actually listen to a radio friend like we are. We're both on the radio, and most of our audience doesn't know us personally or intimately. So they're more likely to listen to what we say as opposed to a friend or a relative.
Yes, and that happens of course, in therapy all the time. You know, a couple will come in and I say something and the partner says, see, I've told you that forever. I've been telling you the same thing. And it's like, well, yeah, but you've been telling him the same thing. It has to come from someone else for him to hear it. Sometimes that's just the way it is, him or her.
Since this indeed has been a financially oriented program for quite some time, and some of our listeners may be asking the question, what does any of this have to do with money or finance? Let me ask you this. What do finances or financial troubles have to do with a healthy sexual relationship between couples?
Well, stress is the biggest killer of sexual desires. So the main stressors that couples have involve money, children, job-related things, and of course sex becomes a stressor as well. So especially if there's frustration. But financial issues are a great source of strain for couples. It also builds resentment in couples. So when you have resentment, say one partner feels that the other one isn't making enough or is upset because a business has gone downhill or bad decisions were made or they're too stingy or they're cheap or whatever it is, all of these will affect your desire to have sex with them from the other person, right? So if you're feeling resentment at your partner because of some financial issues that you have, that is certainly going to have an impact on your sex life and your relationship. So whenever I see couples that come in with a sex issue, to me that's a symptom. So I look for the underlying reason. And I have had plenty of times when Just even today, I had a woman who is not interested in sex at all. And part of it, and she says the first time it all went downhill for me was when my husband made some really bad business decisions that caused them to have to leave a country because people were coming after him financially. And the resentment went through the roof for her because she left everything behind, her entire family, to come to a new country where she knew nobody, and she's completely isolated. And she is not interested. She's mad at him. She's hurt and she's angry. An angry, mad person doesn't want to have sex. So there's a perfect example of how that got in the way.
I understand, but how do you fix that? And second part of this question, if you're not having a healthy relationship physically with your partner, doesn't that adversely affect your business as well?
I don't know about that. I think that may be an excuse used by some. I'm sorry to say. I'm not sure I agree with that. You know, if I'm not getting enough sex, then I can't focus on work, and therefore you better give me enough sex so I can make money. That wouldn't fly in my face.
Oh, of course, that sounds awful, and forgive me for making it sound that way. That sounds absolutely awful, but isn't it true if you're not having a healthy relationship at home sexually, and you shouldn't bring this up with your partner, that it could continue to adversely affect your financial position?
But it's the relationship. It's not the sex. So if you're not having a good relationship at home, it usually implies that the sex is not going to be there, or it's not going to be good, or somebody is going to be frustrated. So the whole thing is, what is the underlying reason for the lack of sex? Obviously, you lack sex, you get angry, you get frustrated with your partner, you get irritable. Yes, it affects every area of your life, but it's not just the person who is not getting. It's also the other person who may not be willing to engage because of their needs not being met. So all around, it's not a good situation. So that's why marriage counseling it can be a lifesaver.
Well, it would seem like the couple that you referenced that had to leave the country, that the wife is just, for lack of a better term, just too pissed off to turn things around, and perhaps rightly so. So what is the answer in a potential situation like that? Well,
my answer to her was, you made the choice to follow him here, and it's now time for you to start taking care of you. Right? Instead of always blaming the other person, start making changes for yourself. So you can't change your partner, but you can change you. And with this particular woman, it's about learning her own boundaries and knowing what she wants and being able to respect herself in all of this. I don't know if the relationship will survive. I think in this case, she happened to be married to a narcissistic guy who really only cares about himself. But we'll see. We'll see as she puts her boundaries down and starts to really say, no, I don't want to be treated this way, or I need you to do a whole lot more if you want me to be open sexually, what ends up happening. I mean, unfortunately, in this case, he ended up cheating on her anyway and going elsewhere, but that's not her fault. He went elsewhere. He blames her. You know, you're not giving me sex. I had to go elsewhere. Well, that's a choice you make. And rather than fix what's wrong, to me, that's not an answer.
So there's quite a bit of marriage counseling that's involved with your therapy in some cases, correct?
Oh, yes. That's what I do mostly, is the marriage counseling. People come in for sex therapy thinking that I'll fix the sex problem, but in actuality, it has to go to marriage counseling first. I've got to figure out what's going on in that couple before, you know?
Dr. Laurie, when you meet with couples, do you do that exclusively in Montreal, or do you have Skype conferences as well?
Well, I've just started doing Skype conferences. I just started. I have somebody in Bali who reached out to me, and it's like, yes, I started doing that. So I think that's the wave of the future, even in therapy. As much as it's not what I prefer, I really prefer to be in front of somebody with everything that entails in terms of facial expressions and everything else. But Skype is the next best thing.
I'm sure your book has made quite a difference in untold lives out there in the over 50 universe among those that have read your book.
There's one chapter that says, it starts off with, well, if you haven't had sex in a very long time, this is how you begin. That's the problem for a lot of people, is they don't know how. They don't know how to begin. And so when they hear, look, it's okay, it's going to be awkward, it's okay, it's not going to feel normal, it's okay. And when they realize that it's okay, it really gives them permission.
So the feedback overall must be indeed very good then.
The feedback has been great. I do have to tell you that. The feedback has been great. And what I love is that men are reading the book. That, to me, in itself is the biggest feat, because men don't read self-help books. They just don't. That's not their thing. So when the pictures are in it, the men are buying the book. Like, I go to book signings, the men are picking up the book, and that's refreshing.
Tell our audience about your radio show. You mentioned it's on nightly in Montreal. Can our audience stream it around the world?
Oh, yes. I have listeners from around the world. In fact, you can live stream it. So the website is CJAD.com. That's CJAD.com. And it's on at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's Monday to Friday. Now, this is probably the longest running show in that time slot on that radio station, which is the number one talk radio station in Montreal. It also goes to the border states, to Vermont and to upstate New York, etc. And it's a show solely on sex and relationships. And I've been doing it. We're celebrating our Sweet 16 this year. So it's a lot of fun. I love connecting to all our listeners from around the world. We get texts even and phone calls from around the world during the show. It's live, so it's always, the lines are always open. And I answer questions, or we have different themes every night. And it's been great. It's a lot of fun, and I love doing it.
And the best way to contact you is actually through your website, drlaurie.com?
That is the best way. DR and then my name, LAURIE.com, would be a way to get in touch with me, and you'll have information about the book there. My book is available everywhere in all bookstores and also on Amazon and Kindle and all of that. So, yeah, I'm easy to find, not hard to find.
I've been speaking with Dr. Laurie Betito. The book is The Sex Bible for People Over 50, the complete guide to sexual love for mature couples. Dr. Laurie, thanks so much for joining me today on the Ellis Martin Report.
Thank you so much, Ellis. Appreciate it.
Go to Dr. Laurie's website, drlaurie.com. That's drlaurie.com. I'm Ellis Martin, and I may or may not be the male model in the book.